0, 1.
Let's get started.
Chief, I appreciate you coming on again today.
Oh man, thank you for having me, brother.
Alrighty. So, the last time we talked about your first money seizure that was in a compartment in a vehicle. Do you want to talk about that a little bit in more detail?
Yeah, man. So, I was a patrolman.
Okay.
And out working one of these overtime grants, and I stopped this individual. And the good thing about policing, right, is that all criminals have one thing in common when we contact them on the streets, is if there's a consequence involved in their behavior, they have to lie.
Right.
Across the board, 100%, they have to lie.
100%.
Right, they have to. Because there's consequence associated with telling the truth. And that consequence is going to jail. So, you become pretty attuned to detecting deception, right, just from your everyday contacts with victims of crimes or suspects in crimes. And, so interdiction officers, you get a leg up already if you have some experience dealing with patrol calls like that. Now, I'll say this, though. Especially in our area, our smugglers some are just incredible smugglers, man.
Right.
And they develop this tolerance because unfortunately they have to get through a gauntlet of police officers to get money back to Mexico.
Right.
Right. Then going northbound, and they got to get through a port of entry also. So
Right.
your compartments are usually pretty deep, pretty sophisticated, good body work, some damn good engineering in the mechanics. But also coming back north loaded, they have to go through a port of entry. They have to go through a checkpoint where 100% of the vehicles are screened by canines. And then they have to go through another gauntlet of interdiction officers working the roads. So some of these guys are really seasoned, man. But again, man, I was blessed enough to have good mentors. So stop this guy coming out of North Carolina. He's in he's a truck and he's towing a Chevy Trailblazer, like a 2001
Okay.
Chevy Trailblazer, right? And the guy was just a mess, dude. Nothing of what he said made sense to me.
Right.
Okay, nothing of what he said made sense to me. And we'll go into the lesson of that later on. And so nonetheless, ask for consent, get consent to search. Now I got to search 2 vehicles.
Right, because he's towing a car.
Yep. And I was not that good at searching at that time. I could pick off a liar, but articulating him is a little bit more difficult at that time. So luckily, a task force friend of mine, Gus Ruiz from the task force I ended up working at, backed me up on this.
Okay.
And Gus said, I'll search the car being towed if you want to search the other one. So within about a few seconds, Gus is like, hey man, hook him up. It's got a compartment. It's like, holy smokes, what happened, dude?
That was quick.
All he did was lay under it, right? So sure enough, we get back to the PD and Gus shows me exactly what he saw. And made sense. Once he broke it down, just not saying that, look, man, it's an SUV. The floor is going to be built down more likely than being built up because there's more room, right?
Right.
But he showed me why it's significant and what he found, where the frame rails, the cross-member frame rails had been cut to facilitate the box, being built underneath underneath the floor. And it was a really good build. I mean,
This was a false floor compartment?
Yeah, it was a false floor in the back of the Trailblazer.
Okay.
This
is the towed vehicle, right?
Yeah, towed vehicle,
Okay.
Yep. So we get back to the PD, man, and this thing was on an actuator, like a window actuator, right? And we couldn't get it open. The guy was not cooperating, and so we had to force it open and break it. All there was I think it was like 50,000, 55,000, somewhere in there, right? So it's not, especially in this area at that time, it wasn't significant at all, right? It's like having $20 in your pocket for these guys. And but for me, you'd have thought it was like $2 bazillion in there, right? And that obviously taught me a lot of lessons because we had just started getting dash cams at that time, the old VHS dash cam. So I was able to go back through it and review it with some of these interdiction guys who pointed out obviously a shit ton that I had missed, and there was a lot. Especially with behavior that I had not picked up on, right?
Right.
Well, here's a lesson it taught me, dude. Is when you're interviewing this individual and they're lying, they have something going on, you just can't pinpoint what it is, right? Your brain is registering a lot of information subconsciously, like, your brain. And so with my company, I teach detecting deception, right? So your brain process, that's where it's coming from. Your brain processes so much information at one time without you knowing exactly that it's processing it.
Right.
Every time you look at something, the immediate reaction is recognizing as a friend or foe. Your body
Right.
reacts right instinctively, and all these things happen. At the time, I didn't know any of this. So these guys are pointing all of these things out to me, right? Like, look what happens when you ask this question. Look what happens when you ask that question.
Your proxemics, things you're not even in control
Of
of.
course not. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. The subconscious brain
Right.
overpowers. The limbic system kicks in, tries to keep you alive. And these are things that they never taught the police academy or FTOing, right?
Right.
You're never taught these things. Again, product of where I work, man. I was blessed that these guys knew how to search cars at a whole different level.
Right.
But all of these guys had already been to court and won.
Right.
So these are the kind of guys you definitely want to learn from and take notes from. And so that taught me a tremendous amount about behavior and searching vehicles, man.
Right.
But I'll say this. That was my first compartment of money load. And after that, they got a hell of a lot easier.
Right. You just had to get over that, just had to break the ice, I guess.
Yeah, and what was cool is that Gus took the time to show me, like, look, dude, this is why it's off, and this is why it should stand out.
Right.
You have frame rails, right? It was a body on frame chassis.
Right.
So you have frame rails that go side to side to support the undercarriage as well underneath the floor. He says, well, look at this right here. It's cut here, box in the middle, the end. Right. So it's like commonsensical stuff talking about it now, but when you're on the side of the road and you're processing so much information, the thing about it is, dude, as cops, when we know we have something like that, we know the individual's lying. They're having to process a ton of information, right, to fill in the gaps of that lie. Because it can't tell us the truth.
Right.
So the brain automatically pulls from either episodic memory or somatic memory. And while they're pulling all of this in, we're already thinking 3 steps ahead on, I want to get to consent.
Right.
And this is the craziest thing, dude, is when I rewatched that video with Gus,
Right.
I missed probably about 90% of the stuff this guy was saying into it.
Right.
Like, no doubt.
100%.
Because I was processing at that same rate as well.
Right.
And my goal was to get in that car and search it.
Right.
That was my goal, man. That's where I knew I had to be.
Just wanted to search the car.
That's it.
Just
so in my mind, I'm certain, I can tell you right now, dude, I gave 2 shits about what he was saying. I knew he was lying.
Right.
I knew there's some substance there to lying. So I asked for consent pretty quick, get it, and then the rest is history, right? But going back and rewatching that, dude, changed my game, man.
The interview was all over.
Oh, dude, yeah. And then another friend of mine, Fidel Gonzalez, who worked in the same task force, told me something pretty cool, man, especially with body cam, or dash cam, I'm sorry. And I tell a lot of officers this. Go back and watch your videos. Even if it's a street level, like a gram of coke, whatever. Go back and watch your videos, but don't listen to the audio. Mute it.
Just watch their body language.
That's right. It forces you to watch it.
Right.
Forces you, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. And that, the same thing can also be said for not only drug interdiction, but, any type of criminal behavior where if you have to lie about it, there's going to be tails.
100%.
There's going to be, different things with the body language, different things with the inflection of the voice, and, take this completely outside of the law enforcement arena, a person who's cheating on their wife.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And they're asked a question, they're challenged with something that has a consequence to it. You're going to see the same behaviors and the same mannerisms, the same type of things, dealing with somebody, who doesn't want to get in trouble. So,
and it's funny you say that, right? That you bring that up, man, is I bring that up in 100% of my classes. When we talk about behavior, and here's how I relate it. We stop somebody, where are you coming from? Houston. Okay. Well, if they stayed at a stash house where they pulled dope out of a compartment in a car, and they loaded money back in the same compartment, now it's tripping south, and we stop it, what don't they want to tell you about? Being at the stash house.
Right.
So what do they say? Stay at a hotel.
Right.
Great. So we should have a name. We should have a room. We should have somebody else who's there with you, right? Details that can elicit that deception.
Right.
Now, here's the deal with this. Here's the way I tell officers. Okay, let's say you're on duty. You meet this young lady.
Right.
And this relationship goes on and on. You're married.
Right.
You got a 10-year-old kid.
Right.
You're having this affair. Okay. And your wife thinks there's something going on.
Right.
And one day, you said you're supposed to be off work at 5,
Right.
but you call your wife, say, look, I got reports I got to do, whatever.
Right.
And she drives up and down the highway and she sees your car at a hotel.
Right.
Okay. When you get home,
She's
things
gonna
are
have
different.
questions.
Yeah. Things are different. The mood
Right.
is different.
Right.
Right? Her demeanor's different. And the first question is where are you at about 6 o'clock today? And your mind, the way your mind works, right? It immediately processes the truth. It
Right.
defaults to the truth.
Right.
So immediately in your brain, when you say something like that, right? The hotel room pops up in your brain, an image of it,
Right.
and the image of what you did there pops up. That's instinctively. You can't, that's something that the brain cannot suppress. It's going to happen. Why?
Right.
Because it's pulling from episodic memory.
Right.
Episodic memory is usually your truthful memory because it just occurred, hence
Right.
episodic.
Right.
But here's the thing. Are you going to tell your wife, well, I was at a hotel with another chick a little while ago?
Right.
You can't.
Right.
Because that's where, right? That's where you violated the sanctity of your marriage.
Right.
No different than being at a stash house.
Right.
That's where the dope was taken out of a vehicle, money was put back in.
Right.
Same exact concept, right? It
Right.
truly is.
Exactly. And that's when you have to insert some space to think.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
when you start repeating the question that they just asked you, or trying to insert space into the conversation to give your mind time to think of a appropriate response
Well, of
to
course,
the
yeah.
question that you just
And
asked.
yeah, absolutely, man.
you
Right?
know?
You have that dislocation between your brain processing and your mouth speaking, right? There's a pretty good statistic out there. Stenographer study, it says your brain thinks 10 times faster than the mouth can speak. So
Right.
you're processing just so much information, man. I mean,
Right.
just your mouth can't keep up with
Right.
it. And the good thing about that is when you're lying like that and you have to fill in the space with something else, your brain pulls from that somatic memory. In other words, it might have been an incident from a long time ago, a hotel you stayed at.
Right.
So I got to tell her about this hotel,
Right.
right? I can't tell her the hotel is just that because that's where the bad,
Right.
bad things happen. No different than a smuggler.
Right.
No different, dude, than a
Right.
smuggler.
You
So, we apply the same science behind it and it works.
Right. Human
Yeah.
behavior is human behavior, no matter what
That's right.
the situation.
That's
So,
right, man. Biology is biology, right? You can't change that,
Right.
right? And that was in the book that I co-authored. That was one of my chapters. Was that
Right,
right?
right.
Human biology, right?
Right.
And because it speaks to everybody. I mean,
Right.
it speaks to everybody. As long as we look at people objectively and without biases, man, we're going to be successful.
Right on. So, dope. What was your first big dope seizure? Obviously the money's coming southbound, dope goes northbound. Probably around the same time period that you hit the cash load coming south. Did were there any big dope loads that you can think of that you early on in your
Yeah.
career?
So I hit my first dope load at like in 05.
Okay.
Right around there when we first started that interdiction unit, man. I stopped a Mexico plated Nissan. It's called a Suru,
Okay.
TSURU. It's a Mexico made vehicle, but it's the equivalent to a Nissan Sentra, an older model Sentra
Okay.
for us. It was very commonsensical, man. When I went and talked to the driver, I could smell Bondo and
Right.
whatnot inside the car. And I could also see that there was Bondo dust embedded in the plastic cowling underneath the windshield. So I knew somebody did some work in there. And then I asked the driver for his, and a lot of people don't know this, but in the state of Texas, if you're operating a motor vehicle that is out of Mexico registration, they have to carry around what's called a tarjeta de circulación. Okay, it's a registration card.
Okay.
So this guy tells me, whose car is this? It's my car. Oh, okay. Can I see your tarjeta de circulación? Well, I'm sure he wasn't ready for me to ask that question
Right.
because he never would have told me the car was his.
Right.
This tarjeta de circulación has the registered owner's information, has the year of the vehicle,
Okay.
VIN, their address, has all that stuff on it. So when he hands me this, guess what? Shocker.
It wasn't his car.
No, somebody else's.
Right.
Right. So story change. Long story short, man, both firewalls were loaded. The firewall, but he had access points on the driver's side fender and the passenger side fender.
Okay.
and it's, I think, about 32-ish keys of coke in there,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah, that
Uh,
was my first one, my first big seizure
I
like that.
got you. So the next question is gonna be, what do you prefer to work? Do you prefer to work dope
The
going
great debate,
north,
dude.
or do you like to work cash going south?
You want me to give you the chiefly perspective?
The chiefly perspective versus the
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Well, we can't buy Tahoes of dope, right? A friend of
right.
mine told me
Exactly.
that. Yeah, dude. It's well, obviously, man. Every agency dreams to have an asset forfeiture account that
Right.
large, right?
Right.
But what's the sacrifice? I'll tell you, sacrifice is this, man. Is now that I have to deal with overdose deaths in my city,
Right.
and knowing that my job is to take care of the officers at the agency so they can keep our public safe. Knowing that my officers run out of Narcan because of Narcaning so many people,
Wow.
um, concerns the hell out of me, right? So obviously, with maturity and my job description changing,
Right.
I look at it from a different perspective.
Exactly.
You know, as an interdiction officer, I love getting loads of cash, right? Because, well, they came back in the form of tools and toys.
Right.
First time I hit $1 million was in '08, and it was like 1.3 million in a Range Rover, false floor. He had a rifle, Glock, 8 boxes of 5.53 or 5.56, and about right under 1.3 mil.
Nice.
Right compartmented car, cold stop on US 77 in Kingsville. And chief of police, never forget, pulls me aside. What equipment do you want? Anything you want.
Right. What kind of car you want? What kind of Tahoe you want?
Yeah. I mean, that's really what happened, right?
Right.
And I said, look, everybody across the country is starting a patrol rifle program.
Right.
That's all I want for every officer. Done.
That's
55
awesome.
rifles ordered immediately.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So when you see the benefit of it like that, right?
Right.
You know you're doing something good for the agency, and
Right.
you're doing something good for the individual officer. So that was great, man, as an interdiction officer. And then when I worked at the South Texas Specialized Crimes and Narcotics Task Force, we loved hunting money,
Right.
right? We loved hunting money, man. And the thing is, look, at that agency, we were self-funded, so we needed to bring in money.
Right.
But I also realized, man, that, dude, this country is in a bad place right now with drugs, fentanyl, and
Right.
all this other crap that's coming out, man. These synthetic drugs, killing people left and right, dude. I have one officer in my agency who has Narcan 3 different people in one day.
Wow.
Like, think about that, man. 3 different people in one day.
That's crazy.
I work in a city where our population is right around 12,000 ish.
Right.
And if you look at my crime statistics that we post on Facebook every month, we had 55 drug offenses in the last 30 days. Think about that, dude. 55 drug offenses in the last 30 days in this city.
It's almost 2 a day.
It's hurting our place, man. It's
Right.
hurting our, it's killing Americans.
Right.
And I understand it's a free will thing, man, but
Yeah.
brother, if we can do something to prevent it, like getting
Right.
fentanyl off the streets,
Exactly.
right, or heroin off the streets,
Right.
we need to do it. So I will tell you this. Had you asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have told you I only want guys to hunt money.
Right.
But I can't say that, man,
Right.
because I want people to hunt dope, man.
Right.
I know that we're saving lives, dude.
Right. Well, I think there's a place to have kind of a happy medium.
Yeah.
I mean, there's agencies out there that will have officers who work both. They'll have a guy who he's the dope guy, and you've got a guy that's the money guy. The one guy works eastbound, one guy works westbound, one guy works north, one guy works south. Whatever the case may be with your geographical location, to where the 2 interdiction officers can specialize in their craft, because there's going to be things that are different on a car that's, going inbound or outbound. There's going to be little small details and nuances that are going to be different on a loaded car that's coming up or a car that's going down. And so having 2 officers to be able to, specialize in their direction and the thing that they like to do, dope or money, is good, in my opinion. But
No, and it is, dude. It is. because and I'll tell you right now, man, not everybody was a money guy, in the area we worked.
Right.
A lot of guys worked dope, man, and I could tell you like there was two instances where I never really was a dope guy
Right.
earlier on in my career.
Right.
And it's two different situations, bro, where I'm leaving the office. The task force office is out on a ranch.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool place, man. It's like away from everything.
Right.
And
That's cool.
I'm leaving the county road, and 77 is right in front of us. So again, the median to go home, and my house was north of where we work. So I'm watching northbound traffic as it goes on a Friday, two different times on a Friday, dude.
Right.
And ruined a Friday for my partners.
Right.
Yeah, because
you saw something that comes by and you're
good
like,
behavior,
oh,
and
man,
I'm like, I got to give it a shot, dude.
I got it.
And everybody took a shit on me for it.
Right.
Dude, you killed our weekend.
On a
bro.
Friday afternoon, you just had to stop that car.
Yeah,
Right.
dude, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. One of them was a freaking crazy good compartment. It's deep in the engine, and that one taught us a lot. So we were all excited about that, But yeah, one was a truck tractor, and it just like all the guys were like, really, bro, you had to do this today, right now, like we just couldn't wait.
Right.
And I was like, man, it's an accident, right? Like I usually only face southbound.
Right. So down here, closer to the border, a lot of what we're hearing about, on your stories and stuff is trap cars.
Oh yeah.
Cars with, aftermarket compartments in them. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in geographically? So like if I'm an interdiction officer and I'm working on a highway that runs between, say, Houston and Austin, or Houston and another part of Texas, or Dallas and another part of Texas, a roadway that's not a direct line from the border, and the dope has already been in a trap car up to a hub city, or like a source city, and it's already been taken out of the compartment and put in a backpack or a duffel bag, or a cardboard box, or however it's decided to go to the next location. Can you talk about kind of the difference between the things that those cops are going to experience? Because the guys that are out there on the highway are not going to see trapped out cars obviously as much as you see them down here. Kind of to talk about the dynamic, between the difference between trap cars in this area and post trap cars after they leave the source city.
Yeah. So the good thing about it is this is I hope your listeners really truly believe this is regardless of how much dope the individual has or the compartment they have, you're going to get the same behavior, right? Like, as long as they're committing a crime and they have to lie about it, you're going to get behavior. So that's a good thing. But now coming to the search. Yeah. So, it depends on the source city, dude, and who they're working with. It really does, dude. So, I get a call from Jersey.
Okay.
A buddy of mine who's he's an HSI agent.
Okay.
He's from this area. He's a trooper down here. Great interdiction officer. Calls me up, says, "Hey man, I need your help with some batteries." Okay, cool. What happened? He goes, "Well, we had this car stopped yesterday by some very, very seasoned and qualified interdiction guys who do a lot of teaching about compartments all over the country, right? And they searched the truck, didn't find anything. Kick you loose, says it's not loaded. We're up on a wire, and the crooks are saying, we missed the dope. We missed the dope, missed the dope, missed the dope. Well, the truck drove all the way from Laredo, Texas, the southern border, to Jersey. So sure enough, I get up on the phone, we do some FaceTiming. Long story short, batteries were each loaded as a diesel truck. Each loaded with 5 keys of fentanyl.
Wow.
Yeah. And it really wasn't difficult to find. Because so when I teach, I set down like rules on how we rapidly assess vehicles, right? And when we deal with mechanical parts of the vehicle, the drivetrain, I have 2 rapid assessment points. One is consistency, and the other one is functionality. So I look for something that is inconsistent, like a dirty engine. The engine base is dirty as hell, man, but the battery's clean, right?
Right.
And, I mean, you could have an innocent reason why, right? Change batteries. Or there's a loaded battery in there.
Right.
Okay, so now if we suspect it, we need to know what normal is.
Right.
So the way I teach my students is now we got to learn functionality. 12-volt battery has six channels in it, right? Just
Right.
picture it like that. 6 cells. If it is a non-vented battery, in other words, it doesn't have vent caps up top, more likely than not, it's going to be what we call a full cell load, where they take all the cells out of the battery and they operate off of a motorcycle battery and
Right.
5 keys.
Right.
If it's a vented battery with the vent caps on top, okay, it's going to be what's called a half cell. So you'll see the top half of your cells, right? But the bottom half is going to be dull.
Right.
So knowing that, we know how to attack it.
Right.
So seeing that, those batteries that my buddy sent me, knew immediately, right?
Right.
We knew immediately what kind of compartment it was going to be,
Right.
if it was compartment.
Right.
So we have to check the weight, and most batteries weigh between 40 to 55 pounds. Well, that one weighed about 10 pounds.
Right.
So we had some problems, right?
Right.
Obviously, discrepancies.
Right.
So if we just know those simple rules,
Right.
you're going to catch them all day long.
Right.
And it's not that these interdiction officers who initially stopped it are not good interdiction officers.
Right.
They are. They just didn't anticipate coming across something a little bit more sophisticated.
Right.
So here's what I teach my students, man, is this. Yes, you may work in an area where you're going to get that dope going from city to city, right? It goes to a stash
Right.
house in Houston, gets broken down. What we usually see is cars with smaller compartments, like usually in your dash, center console,
Right.
floors where you can put it on either trunk latch or some type of actuation, right?
Right.
That's where you're going to find those types of compartments is,
Right.
you know, from stash house to Austin or whatever.
Right.
So we're moving dope into Houston. It's going from Houston, Dallas, up 45. It's going to be in a different compartment. But if we teach our officers and train our officers to truly believe in searching bumper to bumper, bottom of the tire to the roof,
Right.
and we teach them how to do it properly, not just by what we've encountered and seen, but
Right.
realizing that it's not the only way to search a vehicle. Regardless of what they encounter, they're going to beat them.
Right.
100% of the time, they'll
Right.
beat them. Just like with the batteries, right?
Right.
Had those interdiction officers known how to search batteries properly,
Right.
all day long, man,
Right.
they'd find those batteries. You know, so
Which that brings me to a point is if an officer's got a guy on the side of the road and the first thing out of the guy's mouth is, "Oh, officer, I just got stopped earlier today,"
yeah.
and gives you a copy of a citation or a warning or whatever the
Dude,
case
we
may
get
be,
that all the time.
don't just believe, "Oh, I'm sure they searched it.
Yeah.
I'm sure if there was something here, they would have found it." You know, still do your job, still do everything that you would do on a normal basis.
So we had we get a call from customs. Said, "Look, man, we have this truck flag, had a text record on it, going northbound. Crossed the bridge, searched for 3 hours at the bridge." Okay, they released it. Got to the checkpoint, searched for 2 hours at the checkpoint. So one of my interdiction officers, Chris Lee, stops it. Or Chris Salazar, I'm sorry. I have a Chris Lee, so works for me. That's what I said that. Chris Salazar, he stops this, and 18-year-old driver, 19-year-old passenger female coming out of Mexico. Obviously, he realizes something's pretty jacked up with their story.
Right.
So I back him up. He gets consent. Now think about this. How confident you think these girls are?
Oh, 100%. They think that they're just
5 hours searching, bro.
they're the best narco traffickers in the state of Texas right now. They just beat
Unfortunately for them, I know the engine on that truck.
right.
The back of my hand, brother. And I can show you the body cam footage, man. I lift the hood, and within maybe about a second or two, I was like, "Yeah, hook them up,
That's awesome.
done."
That's
Now,
awesome.
we have to look at how did I get there, right? And it was this. I paid attention to what the guys that taught me how to do this job told me. When they told me, if you don't understand something, man, go to the garage and go figure it out. Talk to mechanics, man, learn. So I've hit a bunch of Chevy 350 engines,
Right.
right? A little bit of doper money between the push rods underneath the intake by that time.
Right.
When I popped the hood on this truck, I knew immediately what they did.
Right.
Okay, they cut. If you could picture, so Chevy, they have 4.3 liter V6, right? That older one is also overhead valve, so it's like the 350. And what makes that compartment so effective is if you're going to schools and all they tell you is easiest way to search an intake, open throttle body, look down, done. If it's empty, it's empty. If it's blocked, high five, you got to load.
Right.
Bad guys know this.
Right.
Bad guys know this. Remember I told you about the technique last episode where I show guys like how you can probe,
Right.
between the push rods in there. Okay.
Right.
So I know how to search that engine very well. What I notice is this. Okay. 2 things I pointed out immediately, and I have on my training video, I talk about it, is one, how far the AC compressor is to the cooling fans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On a normal 4.3, there should be at least 1.5 feet, dude. At least, man.
Okay.
Well, on this one, it was almost touching.
Wow.
Okay. The other thing is, if you follow your main water pump hose, okay, comes out of right out of your water pump, goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on that particular engine, on the 4.3 and the 350, your thermostat's right in front of the throttle body,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it should get plugged in there. Well, this one wasn't. This one went directly into the upper intake manifold.
Okay.
Done. So what it was is they cut the front 2 cylinders off of a Chevy 350.
Right.
Like if you just take a saw, dude, and just picture grinding just the engine in a quarter,
Right.
the front quarter where your front 2 cylinders are. They rebuilt the valve covers, they extended them,
Right.
okay, and they shoved heroin all in that additional space.
Right.
All that entire thing was loaded.
Wow.
So it was underneath the intake manifold. And that was the largest heroin seizure in the country on a traffic stop in 2022. 2022.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome.
58 pounds of heroin.
Wow.
Black tar. Yep. And, but the reason I say all that is that's a difficult compartment, dude.
Right.
I mean, you can't fault these guys for not finding it.
Right.
They just didn't know how to search it.
Right.
They didn't know what normal was.
Right.
Right.
Right. That's awesome.
So we show in that class exactly how to find normal, right? And it's simple. Once you know what that normal is, I mean, dude, you're going to pick them apart within seconds. And then that's all it literally took, but because I knew that engine so well.
Right. Right.
But for guys that don't, my best advice is this: attend a good class where a guy has a ton of experience.
Right.
And is not going to leave you feeling incompetent when you pop a hood on a car and see fingerprints all over the intake,
right,
and not know how to attack it.
Right.
That's the wrong time, dude, to try to figure all that out.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I appreciate the information that you've given us during this episode, and I just want to invite all of our listeners to come back next week for part 3 with Chief Mike Tamez. Until next time, we'll see you down the road on Texas Narcos. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Texas Narcos Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, share our podcast with your friends and family. You can find Texas Narcos Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Your continued support helps us to bring you stories like the one you just heard. Thank you, God bless, and we'll see you down the road on Texas Narcos.